Hi, welcome to another video by Jimthecarguy. Today we're working on an older Honda. It's a 97, it's a Civic, it's a 1.6 liter. The complaint is that the vehicle is overheating when the customer drives. The needle gets pinned all the way up into the hot zone. And it doesn't appear to be leaking any fluids, but let's get in there and let's take a look at it and figure out what's going on with it. Alright, let's get in. First thing you want to check is you want to obviously get underneath the hood and look around to make sure that there's no leaks anyplace. I am not going to open up the cap because I already opened it up before. It's hot now, actually. I did open it up before. I made sure it's full. The overflow is actually over full, which tells me that it probably did run hot. When it ran hot, the antifreeze expanded, went into the overflow tank, and that's where it is now. But as you can see, there is no visible signs of leakage anyplace. So the first place we're going to check is we're going to check the cooling fan right here to make sure the cooling fan is functioning properly. And let's grab a power probe and let's check it out and find out what's going on with this. So let me get some tools and we'll come right back. Okay, now that we have a power probe connected, we're going to come down to there's two different fans on this particular car. This fan over here is the one that actually cools the condenser for the air conditioner. So this one, we're not going to even take a look at this right now because that's irrelevant right now to the problem we're having. What we're going to do is we're going to come into this one over here. This is the cooling fan right here for the radiator. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to check to see if it has power and ground. And we're not puncturing the wires, we're actually sliding into the electrical connector to test it. We know it has a ground there. And it also has a ground there. And the reason it has that second ground there is because the power is actually being fed back through, because if power is not here, power like 12 volts or better is not here, the ground feeds right straight through the motor and right back up to there. So the way you would test it, and I did look this up on the computer ready, the wiring on here, the green is actually the negative, and the power is supplied by the black with the red tracer, or so it looks like anyway. So the way we're going to test the cooling fan is we're just going to bring power into this circuit right here. If the cooling fan runs, we know the cooling fan is okay. Now let's see what happens. We're going to press the power probe and bring power into that circuit. If you don't have a power probe, you can back probe this with a, I'll show you. Very easily you can just take a paper clip, some high-tech paper clips actually. That's a joke, by the way. Slide it in through the electrical connectors right here, and then you could bring power in from connecting a jumper wire from the positive side of the battery to this side over here. So now if we bring power into this side here, that cooling fan should run. Let's see. Oh. And the cooling fan runs. We're going to let it run for a minute, because sometimes when these fans get hot, they do stop working. So we're going to check that just to make sure. And it seems to be working properly. All right, now I might add that the key is in the on position because we're checking this with the key in the on position. Obviously the car is off. One more time we're going to check it to see. Sounds perfect. Another thing we always check with these cars here is the fan itself, to make sure that the fan is tight and not loose, because sometimes the bearing goes bad in there. In this case here, it feels fine. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come back over by the thermostat housing here, and there's a switch right here. This is a fan control switch. This is what turns the cooling fan off and on when it reaches a certain temperature. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those high-tech paper clips that we have, and we're going to go into the back of the wiring right here, slide it in through the wiring. You're not going to puncture the wires, you're just going to slide it in right where the wires go through the harness here. So let me just slide these down in here, and then we're going to check power and ground at that. From what I'm remembering, this one here, this one is supposed to have a ground, but we're going to check now. Let me get these clips connected in there, and then we'll come right back. Okay, now I do have the car running. It's been running for a while now, and the temperature is up to a normal range. And the way you would check these, this switch back here, is you're supposed to have ground, which it does, and positive, which it does. What happens is this switch here has negative going in through it here, positive is being backfed through here. When this switch closes the circuit, this one becomes negative and it turns the cooling fan on. So let's see what happens. We're going to bring a negative circuit into into it, and we'll see if the cooling fan turns on. Okay, so now we know that we can manually control the fan, and that the switch is most likely the issue. The car is actually 3/4 up on the temperature gauge right now, so we know that this switch here is going to be no good. So while we're in here, we're going to change the switch. We're going to also change the thermostat, which is located right inside here. And we're going to replace these hoses too, because this has 150 or 160,000 miles on it, and it's definitely time to replace them. So just so we don't run into any issues where we're going to blow a head gasket, we're going to go pretty aggressively on this one to make sure that everything is done and done properly. So let me shut this off. We're going to let it cool down a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. All right, I'm not going to bore you with how to replace these hoses, because basic replacing the hoses is a quite simple job. It's only a matter of taking off the clamps and replacing them with the new. The thermostat is a fairly easy job also. We're just going to take out this screw here and this screw here, remove the thermostat housing from here. We're going to change the switch at the same time, and the switch pretty much just comes right out. The way you're going to do that is you're just going to unplug it right here. You take this plug, push it in, rotate it, and pull it right out. All right, and then obviously you're just going to unscrew it and put the new switch back in. All right, so let's grab some tools and going to start draining this out, and we'll come back once it cools down a little bit. Okay, what we do is we have the antifreeze draining out of the car right now, and the way you drain it is down on the bottom. I know it's hard to see when you're down underneath the car. You can see it, but down underneath here, right in this area right here, there's a drain valve underneath there where you can open it up and let the fluid drain out. I do have it draining. It's almost empty now. You do not want to open up this radiator cap while it's hot. That's pretty much it. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take these clamps off, and we're going to replace all the hoses. Fairly simple. You just take a pair of pliers, you grip it, put them up like this here. Same thing on this side over here. Okay, sorry about that cutting out, but something very important happened. One of my customers brought me a coffee, so I can never pass up a cup of coffee. All right, so basically back to what we're doing here. You just get in here with a pair of pliers, you take that clamp, you remove it back to here. Same thing on this side here. If you can't get in, you're going to obviously go in any way that you possibly can. You get in here and you grab the clamps, you pull them back. What I want to point out is that when you take these hoses off, you don't just pull them off, because if you try to, you know what, let me take that clamp off and I'll come right back and I'll show you what I mean. All right? You get the clamp all the way back and out of the way like this here. Now, what you never want to do, especially when you get to an older vehicle, you never want to grab this and start twisting it and pulling it off. This neck here is made of plastic. You start twisting that neck, you're going to break it. This is the way you do it. You grab a razor blade and you just take it here and you cut it with the razor blade. Nice and easy. Once you cut it with the razor blade, you just get underneath here and you can do like this, and you pull that right off without causing any damage to anything else. All right? Over here it doesn't really matter too much because you're talking about an aluminum housing. Chances are you're not going to have a problem. But I do it anyway because it makes it a little bit easier for me, and I like doing things a little easier if I can. It just comes right off, just like that. All right, now we're going to do the same thing with all these other hoses that you see on here too. We're going to change the heater hoses, all of the heater hoses and the lower hose, and then we'll change the thermostat. So I'm not going to bore you with removing the hoses. It's basically the same procedure. Take the clamps off, pull the hoses off after you cut them, and that's it. Be extremely careful down in the back by the heater core. These hoses connect into the heater core right here. You never want to twist these and try to get those hoses off. You twist them, you're going to break the heater core, and you're going to be changing the heater core, and nobody wants to change the heater core if you don't have to. All right, so we're going to take those clamps off. We're going to cut the hoses with the razor blade, and we're going to pull everything out of there, and we'll replace it with the new. Once we do, we'll come right back. All right? Okay, we could take out to change the thermostat. I already broke these bolts loose already because they were very tight. So we're going to unscrew these and take these out. As you can see, I'm using a swivel to get in there on a 1/4-inch set because you really don't want to do a 3/8 on here and snap the bolt off. Otherwise, you'll be changing the thermostat, the whole housing itself. All right, we're going to take all these wires off too. These wires are for the ground, for some of the electrical stuff. These were really tight also. Actually, they felt like it was going to break. That's how tight they were. So we're going to... And the last bolt we're going to take out is right down here. Now, I did break these loose already. It was tough to get in there with a... tough to get in there with a ratchet, but what I did is I got in here with a wrench and I was able to get the leverage to break everything loose. Alright, so we're going to take these out. Once we take them out, that'll access the thermostat in here for us. Don't drop them, otherwise you're going to be going crazy trying to find them. Now once you got the bolts out and you have the thermostat housing off, you can take this off. Make sure you have a bucket down there because you are going to lose some antifreeze. Now, take note the way that the thermostat comes out. You see this here? This is for to let the air come out up on the top here. So you want to have this back up on the top when you replace it. All right. So now you can take this out. You can just get in there with a pair of pliers if it's stuck and pull it out. Right? So that's the way you got to put it back in, with this piece up on the top here. Alright. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take this over on the vise and I'm going to remove this switch and I'm going to install this new switch in place of it. It's just a matter of putting a socket on there and taking it out. So I'm going to do that, grab the new thermostat, and then we'll come right back. Okay, as you can see, the new thermostat I put in there already. There's only one way you can go in. You see these gasket has these little pins here. They have to fit up in the top right there. So we made sure we put it back in the same way. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our thermostat housing. All right, we're going to put that back on. As you can see, I didn't change the switch yet. I'm going to do that because it was a little bit difficult inside the vise to do that. So I didn't want to damage this surface right here. All right, so we're going to screw this back together now. We're going to put little never-sees on the threads so that we don't have an issue screwing everything back together again. Make sure your thermostat stays in place. You don't want it to slide out of there. And you want to catch everything by hand. Nothing goes with a wrench or a ratchet or anything yet. Okay, now after we got these bolts all tight, we have the electrical connector connected back on. We're going to remove this switch now. The switch was a little tight before. I didn't want to do it in the bench and damage it. So we're going to do it right here while it's on the car. You can just unscrew it. Take it out. Make sure your O-ring comes out with it because the new one comes with the new O-ring. Now you don't have to tighten it up real tight. You're just going to catch it in there snug because the O-ring is what's going to actually seal it off. Screw it all the way down and then we'll just tighten it up with the ratchet. Now remember, this is a 1/2 inch, so we're not going to go too tight. We don't want to damage anything. Just snug it down. All right, put our electrical connector back on. There's only one way it can go. Snap it in place. Okay, we're going to reconnect our hose, and then we're going to fill it up, and we'll come right back once we have it connected back up. Okay, now we have everything reconnected. We have all the hoses tightened on, all the clamps are tight, all the hoses back in here are done. We reconnected it down on the bottom of the radiator, and we also reconnected it up on the top. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to fill it up with antifreeze, and we're going to get this thing started. We're going to also put our air filter box right back in this area right here. So let's put the air filter box in, and then we're going to fill up the antifreeze and get this job wrapped up. Don't forget, put your clamps back on that actually hold the hose away from everything else. Right? We're going to put these back on here. I'm going to have to do it with 2 hands, but that's where that goes. This hose goes back in here, where it belongs there. We're going to put our box back in, and we're going to fill it up with antifreeze. Okay, now we have the antifreezes filled. We have all the hoses connected, and before we started, we're just going to look everything over just to make sure. Just look at all the hoses, make sure all the clamps are on where they belong. Heater valve is connected up. All your clamps are back in the position where they belong. And air filter box is in. All right, then we're going to start it up, and we're going to let it run. And watch for that cooling fan to come on. So let's come back once this is running. Okay, now that we have it running, we're just going to let it run till it heats up, and then we're going to make sure that that cooling fan comes on. We're just going to look to make sure there's no leaks anywhere, which there isn't. Wash down any of the residual antifreeze that you have in there so that it doesn't drip later on. That's what this is here. You'll see it's wet there because I just poured water in there to clean it all off. All right, we're going to let it run a little bit, and we're going to check this cooling fan, make sure it functions properly. So once it warms up a little bit, then we'll come right back. All right, now we're running for probably about 10 minutes or so. Temperature's coming up to a normal range, and we should see that cooling fan turning on momentarily. That's the sound we're waiting for. Cooling fan turned on just the way it's supposed to. It should run for a couple of seconds or maybe a couple of minutes, and then it'll shut down. And we're just going to wait one more time for it to turn back on just to confirm that everything is okay. And then we're going to take it out and drive it. Alright, thanks for watching. Any questions, any comments, you need any advice, drop me a line. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about anything. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.